Today's World Insight. A tourist boom as hundreds of millions of Chinese go on holiday on Labor Day weekend. What do the tourist numbers tell us about China's economy?
Hello, this is World Insight with me, Tian Wei. This year's Labor Day holiday is in full swing. A big tourism bonanza actually has swept across the nation. That is a clear sign, some say, that China's economy is on a strong rebound. The 5-day-long holiday is drawing crowds to airports and train stations, along with the hustle and bustle in popular tourist spots. Since China actively optimized its COVID-19 response last December, tourism to services and catering have all rapidly recovering. This year, China's first quarter GDP growth has exceeded market expectations, reaching 4.5%. The country did set a GDP growth target of around 5%. The Chinese economy's strong rebound could provide a timely boost to the world economy. For deeper insights, let's loop in our panelists. Joining us in Singapore, Valerie Chang, President of Asia Vision Institute. In Hong Kong, Edward Xie, Chairman and CEO of Gaofeng Advisory Company. In Beijing, Zhi Qiang, Research Fellow of the Global Issues at Beijing Foreign Studies University. Welcome to the program, gentlemen. The Labor Day holiday, Labor Day in China's version, will be May the 1st. So how do you see, Mr. Xu, sitting in Beijing, the trend that we are likely to witness this time?
The trend is actually, it's going to be on fire. In a tourism resort already, if you go around all this hottest spot in Beijing, you find people are waiting in queues because somebody are trying to, dislocate or mislocate with the pace of the major train of the visitors during the holidays. So we have already seen the long queue around the major resort and also the around the hotels and the restaurant. And according to the data we have already received from the railway department and also from the hospitality ministry and etc., we have already seen are like 2 times or 3 times of visitors coming to Beijing. And also we have heard the information that similar trend is happening in other hotspot tourism cities like in Chengdu, in Changsha, Shanghai, Nanjing, and etc. So we are going to see a very, very hot Beijing season during this main festival. Well,
Okay.
in the weather as well as in the tourism, popularity.
So-called revengeful consumption, that was a phrase used, Mr. Xie, in earlier years when you have a rebound of tourism. Now, are we going to see similar situation, or this is going to be a milder one?
I think we're going to see a very similar situation. The general tourism has been suppressed quite a bit for the last 3 years because of the COVID. And now since the zero COVID policy has been lifted, actually tourism has been coming back already slowly. But now with the Labor Day holiday, this is going to be a major occasion for the revenge tourism and consumption too, right, to happen. So we're going to be seeing a very exciting week coming ahead. During
the 3 years of the pandemic, one could argue that the mentalities of a lot of tourists have also been changing. So how is that likely to be reflected in tourism, especially in a country like China, in which the middle class is increasing?
We can see the changing kind of landscape of tourism industry across the region in the post-pandemic era, especially with regard to safety. So I think more tourists now more cautious about health and safety. And of course, they prefer to travel to the destination that they think it can be safe. Because now across the region, I think we try to develop a safe tourism destinations in Southeast Asia in order to attract more Chinese tourists. So this is the new change in terms of tourism industry, how to promote a safe tourist destination.
And of course, this is a huge competition for Chinese tourists, isn't it, among Southeast Asian nations?
Well, we are competing across Southeast Asia to attract Chinese tourists. I think the expectation of Chinese tourists now and compared with the pre-COVID time is quite different. I think the expectation is higher and they prefer more quality tourism than the pre-COVID time. So this is a new challenge for the tourism sector, but also a new opportunity for innovation when it comes to quality tourism. The service need to be higher to serve the influx of Chinese tourists. And of course, this kind of, as I mentioned earlier, the safety and the quality of the service at the hotel, accommodation, food, transport, and so on. So this is something that I think Chinese tourists expect higher in terms of quality of services.
For Hong Kong, we're going to see a major influx of tourists from the mainland over the May 1st, the Labor Day holiday. So we're getting ready to receive a large number of tourists coming from the mainland. The businesses in the tourism business are getting ready, hotels, tourist guides, tour groups, because it's been 3 years. A lot of things has changed, as you know. The mainland tourist is a little bit unfamiliar with the new Hong Kong. And so now coming to new Hong Kong will be somewhat of a new experience to a lot of people. So we're getting ready to receive these visitors, and we look forward to a very exciting week.
How do you see the changes in terms of the quality of service, the types of service among mainland tourists? And what does that mean for competitions elsewhere for Chinese tourists?
Well, my destination is my couch at home. I don't want to, get so crowded in the long queue everywhere. I'm glad that you mentioned about the quality. I do think the quality for Chinese tourism and hospitality industry is getting increased. If you look at the trend of the changes recently, you'll find that there are major changes. For example, if you compare the data that 2019 to pre the COVID, you'll find out the destination for Chinese tourists are what we call the high-end places like the beach in Hainan, and also we go to the rich countries like in America, like Singapore, and I'll go to the Hong Kong region, and most are like that. People are trying to take pictures to show how good their life is. But recently, we noticed the trend has been changing a little bit. For example, some no-name cities have been coming into the list. For example, the Changsha and the Chengdu. They used to be not as hot as right now, but the people really rush into that because people think they have a better performance to price ratio. It's cheaper, but very comfy, and also Guiyang in China, and also many other ASEAN countries, for example, in Laos, and also like Myanmar, a certain region of Myanmar, and also in Malaysia, and etc. So I think these are changes per se. But also I have another point to add. For China right now, people are expanding their horizons. For example, people are going to the ocean fishing, and also going to the hiking and going to the camping. These are the young people's trend recently happening everywhere. So people are finding new ideas. But also the third point I would like to add is that everybody, when they're rushing towards the same destination, the whole thing changes. For example, recently if you go to Guiyang, go to Changsha, you find out everywhere mountain people see. So prices going up, and also Zibo for the barbecue, famous for. Everything is getting so crowded, so expensive. You cannot even book a hotel or even a hostel. And also, I think certain situation happened in Singapore when they reopened in the first place. My friends in Singapore, they complain about it. They say, I cannot even find a seat in the food court, emotional damage. So I think this will happen in China this time as well as the first to open main festival.
Mr. Chu, I tap on your door once again. You're an economist. You said earlier, even though your destination is the couch at home, but in terms of the growth of tourism, domestic tourism in China, how much do you see that could contribute to the overall GDP growth for, let's say, the rest of the first half of this year, the second quarter?
hundreds of millions of people traveling around. And also, let me tell you the number we have already received from the Statistics Bureau. We have already seen double the size of the booking, more than 2019. If you catch the trend of the Chinese government, we've been emphasizing, okay, we've been working too hard in the past 20 years. Now we're going to focus on the domestic consumption. And where is that going? I mean, hospitality industry, tourism is going to be very important, destination, because people need to relax. People need to really spend the money. And this is good timing for us to upgrade our industry. For example, in China, we don't have our own theme park, very good theme park, like Disneyland, like the Universal Studio. And now is the time for China to upgrade and develop. Look at what we have done to upgrade our restaurant, e-commerce, digital economy. And that's a great chance right now. And if that can be done, we're going to look at a whole new value chain happening in Chinese domestic consumption.
Well, the Labor Day holiday is a trend, but it is, shall I say, exceptional in terms of the consumption habits, because this is a very specific 5 days that people have an extended stay of their choice of destinations. But how representative do you see this will be in terms of understanding the trend of consumption in China?
I think the Chinese tourist or traveler now understand this kind of the life experience, how to improve the quality of life and life experience through traveling. So I expect the inbound tourism industry in China is booming. Outbound tourism started a bit slowly because I think the Chinese mentality among the tourists still prefer to travel within the country. Only those who are courageous enough to travel and explore the world, then they will make decisions to travel. But look at the representation of Chinese travel to Southeast Asia. It accounts, I think, that the top international tourist arrival to Southeast Asia. And I think all the marketing strategy across Southeast Asia, mainly to target Chinese tourists and Chinese market through digital marketing, through advertisement, and so on. So this is a big chunk. So China is kind of a elephant in the room for tourism industry in Southeast Asia.
Consumption is becoming more and more important for the composition of GDP for China. As you know, the Chinese have had a very high savings rate for a long time. However, in order to drive the GDP forward, the proportion of consumption is very important, and it's been going up. And within consumption, tourism is the big part of that. So in my view, driving the amount of tourism and also driving up the quality of tourism will be an important part of the double circulation economic policy, in particular, the internal circulation of the double circulation policy of China.
That's a very interesting point you just raised about the double circulation. How will that impact on the trends and the choices of tourists of China?
The first wave is going to be domestic tourism, predominantly. There will be some external overseas tourism, but predominantly it's going to be domestic. Over time, I could see that balance to be, shifting more and more to the overseas tourism. Actually, we have had quite a bit of that before COVID, quite a bit of that. Chinese tourists have been going all around the world, including to Europe and the US and so on. I could see that coming back, maybe not right away, but soon, maybe in the next year or two.
How do you see the geopolitical changes and the, rather the emotions that we have seen among populations in the world likely to have an impact on the choices of destinations among Chinese tourists?
I think that from the Chinese tourist standpoint, certainly this is a part of the considerations. How big it is when they decide on destination, it depends on the individual or the family, but certainly part of the consideration. So I say that, the Chinese will think about, okay, where should I go? Are these places friendly to the Chinese tourists? Can we go and have relaxed and have fun? So that part or those kind of criteria will be part of the consideration.
You're right. I share the view that I think the Chinese tourists also try to understand the political dynamics of a certain destination, especially their perception toward China, because they don't want to encounter this kind of, how to say, sentiment or negative sentiment or perception toward Chinese tourists. But anyway, I think this perception existed in various corners in Southeast Asia before the COVID-19 with regards to Chinese tourists. But I think during the COVID, they really miss Chinese tourists. So now they wish to see the return of Chinese tourists to Southeast Asia. But anyway, I think this kind of tourism industry can help promote mutual understanding and develop a kind of interdependent economic system. So more integration of China into the world economy through tourism industry. So I think a positive point is I think the tourism industry can help to promote the image of China.
How much do you see, Mr. Chu, this could also be an opportunity for the Chinese to communicate with the rest of the world? As we know, if people travel outside the country, they need to communicate with the local communities, some in a deeper degree, some in a relatively small proportion, but still, this is a very interesting opportunity of communication. As we know, over the past 3 years, there has been a deficit of understanding and information sharing among countries, for example, with China. So how do you see this is likely to contribute to the change of the current dilemma?
Oh, yes, I think visiting each other in person is really important. I always remind all my friends, foreign friends and Chinese friends, with one story. It's called the duck blood soup. You know duck blood soup, right? Every Chinese knows duck blood soup with the rice noodles. It's really delicious. But every time when we mention it overseas, when I was in a foreign country, when I mentioned it to my foreign friends, I really want to introduce you some great Chinese cuisine. It's called duck blood soup. Everybody's good. Oh, what is that? Are you talking about vampires? Oh my God, duck blood? Anything worse than that? So you cannot just tell them what it is, and what you can do is invite them into our context. So when they try to visit China, visit Nanjing and Beijing and Guangzhou, and we invited them to the special restaurant to go to enjoy this duck blood soup, and everybody is getting so happy when they drink it. They say, "What is this? It's so delicious." I tell them it's just made by blood. It's blood tofu. And I say, "Oh my God, I see how it is and what it is. It's reasonable and in your context and a culture, and the way you make it very reasonable to enjoy it." So I still remember the former Secretary of State's account, Lisa Rice, used to say one thing in America. They say, when I visit somewhere, I always remind myself, slower to judge, but quicker to try and try to experience. So that makes you more understand about local culture. So I think this can go vice versa. So Chinese people need to go abroad. I can make sure that is the truth, because if you look at the air ticket booking number overseas of China, there are 2 times or 3 times the Chinese people try to visit overseas of China this main holiday. And also there are hundreds of millions of foreign visitors are going to visit in China during the 5 days. And most of them, I think you will enjoy the duck blood soup or pig blood soup or chicken feet. So I think these are the communication moment, and it's good for everyone.
It's a Hong Kong gentleman that's also smiling on the screen. Mr. Xie, of course, all the local delicacies are going to be on top of the agenda for many tourists, but certainly cultural differences still exist there. It's going to be fun, but it's also going to be challenging.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Pragmatically, outbound tourism is going to be good for the receiving side, for the destinations, because it's going to contribute to the local economy. So from that standpoint, Chinese tourists visiting foreign countries is going to be good for them, and also for the Chinese tourists themselves as well. I think from a communication standpoint, I agree with Mr. Chu. Having communication interaction is good. Is going to be good. That I think the Chinese tourists have to be mindful that they actually would be viewed as ambassadors of China to these various foreign places. So I think I think it behooves the Chinese tourists to really be careful and behave well, and to present China in the right way, and therefore enhance the communication between different countries, and that will be good for the world.
For those tourists that are traveling into China, of course, at this moment, the number is still increasing, but yet to reach the level before the pandemic. Mr. Chang, go to you on that. We know China already officially announced that it's going to scrap off the demand for PCR tests among inbound travelers from outside China. So how do you see measures like this can further encourage people to travel both ways?
I think this is important because I've been to China twice after the opening up, and the first time I need to do PCR tests, and lately no need to do. It is kind of troublesome, to do PCR tests. Takes time and of course resources to do it. So I think this kind of a removal of travel restriction, will encourage more foreign visitors to China, because I think a lot of Southeast Asian tourists, for instance, they wish to visit China. So I think one of the top destinations, Japan, Korea, and China, the three kind of Northeast Asian countries is among the top list of destinations.
On the other hand, it's also going to, Mr. Chu, encourage more Chinese tourists to travel abroad, because when they come back to the country, they don't have to take the PCR test as they had to earlier.
Oh, yes, they don't. Actually, after the end of the March, in China, China Customs actually released a wonderful policy that you don't need to do any kind of a PCR test or nucleus test for the disease. So it's a free travel right now. And if you take a look, as I mentioned, if you take a look at the booking numbers of air tickets, go abroad of China, and the numbers are quadrupled and tripled.
Mr. Chu, Chinese economy growth has reached 4.5% first quarter, and yet there is still space to explore. So how do you see where the Chinese economy general trend is going, given the first quarter and given what is going on during the Labor Day holiday, likely?
Actual number for Chinese economy actually should be starting from the Q2, starting from April, and also let's see this main festival and main vacation. That's going to show the true color of Chinese economy. After people just realized, okay, everything is already over, we don't have the disease right now, and let's just full steam engine on and move forward. And Chinese economy is going to move forward as fast as it can. And also we're going to looking at probably 5.5% of the whole year. So you can expect on that.
I'm also very confident of the recovery of the economy here in China. The first quarter number is pretty good already, and I expect a higher number for the rest of the year. The latent demand from the Chinese consumer is very, very significant. It was just suppressed over the COVID period. So it takes time to recover, but I think the latent demand and the momentum will be unleashed in a more fuller manner for the rest of the year. So I'm very confident about an uplift in the GDP growth for this year for China.
But of course, there is the issue of creating of jobs, as we know, for the young people particularly, and also the confidence that people could have in the prospect of the economy, so that people would be able to consume the level they can. So that is pretty much the key, isn't it, Mr. Xie?
That's very true. The unemployment number has been relatively high since actually for a little while already, but I think the latest number have shown an improvement, not significant, but some degree of improvement. And I think that would be the beginning of a trend of a reduction of unemployment. But at the same time, it's still going to be an issue for the Chinese economy for some time. So there is some confidence level, but at the same time, the latent demand, the subsumed demand is so significant over the last several years that now with the COVID over and with policies and so on, incentivizing people to spend money, I am very confident that the recovery is going to be pretty good for this year.
How are people reading the future trend of the Chinese economy? How much do you see the Labor Day holiday will provide you with more further clue?
Well, from outside in perspective here, we are quite confident. I think countries in Southeast Asia are quite confident in the economic performance and recovery of China. And we are hopeful that China economic recovery will also further promote a regional economic recovery. It's kind of the new momentum for the whole region. So the Labor Day is a signpost of this recovery. But I share the view that I think the Chinese consumer are confident and they are willing to spend more. So this kind of consumption behavior really defines the future of China economy and also politics. If they have full confidence in the government, they are willing to spend more because their future is quite certain, right? So I think the Labor Day is a signpost, and I'm confident that this is the starting point of economic recovery of China in terms of domestic consumption, and travel and tourism industry is part of that economic recovery.
And that's all the time we have for today. You can find us on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei on behalf of the team. Thanks for being with us. Bye for now.